All right, so we're now recording. Like to welcome everyone to the special edition, actually, of our Wednesday webinars. Excited to have Sequoia Ireland here to talk about the Farmer to Farmer program, Your Key to International Agriculture. We would like to thank the sponsors of our program as well as recognize the collaborators. We do have some upcoming events. The Regional Women in Ag Conference is next week, February 12th and 13th. There is still room for registration. And we have an Annie's Project class that will be starting in a couple weeks as well. So you can view those events at this blue link here, extension.umd.edu/women in ag, as well as see the full listing of our 2019 webinars, as well as our recorded archive webinars. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn this presentation over to Sequoia. And I've shared my screen, and she'll be sharing her PowerPoint here.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, looking good.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go to full screen so that we can, all right.
It looks great, Sequoia. And anyone that has questions, just please feel free to add those to the chat pod, and we'll help answer those.
Yep. All right. So I just want to, first of all, thank you all for spending your lunch hour to listen to me talk about international development and specifically agriculture. I think that one thing that I like to point out with the Farmer to Farmer program, just to give you all a little bit of history, is it was actually, so the program has been in existence for about 40 years, and there are a host of, or there are a list of organizations that actually implement the program. And so I work with NCBA CLUSA, and we help facilitate this cultural exchange, this agricultural exchange. But one of the key facts that I would like to point out is that it's a program that was started by Doug Baruter, who was a congressman who supported the Farm Bill and farmers, but also by a pilot that he died back on September 9th of 2011. And he was an advocate of immigrant farmers here in the U.S. So I'll go ahead and get into the specifics. Here we go. So NCBA CLUSA, we have over 65 years of international experience working in various countries in Latin America, Africa, even here in the U.S., because we are a co-op association. And we are currently working in 21 different programs, 21 different countries with, I believe it's like 31 different projects that are going on. And so, 31 projects in 21 countries with millions of people's lives who have been impacted by the work that we do. Now, for those of you who may have ever considered volunteering with Peace Corps, some of you may have even volunteered with Peace Corps, but for those of you who are maybe on the fence, I like to think that the Farmer to Farmer program is kind of a program that you can use to test the waters. Like, am I truly interested in international development? Is this something that I would like to get involved in? Because typically our assignments are short term, so we're looking at 2 to 4 weeks versus the 2-year time commitment that the Peace Corps program offers. Here at NCBA CLUSA, we do have, so we're broken up into 3 different practices. So we have our building resilient communities. So we want to make sure that the work that we are doing is going to supply these people with the skills and the tools that they need to withstand any type of weather event, detrimental weather event, even looking at how countries are impacted as a result of a coup, let's say a political coup. Maybe infrastructure is cut off, roads, you no longer are able to receive that weekly truck that may have the grains that you need so that you can provide food for your family, and how we can help those communities to overcome those types of situations. Creating economic opportunities. We focus a lot on like youth entrepreneurship, and this is the program as a whole, our company as a whole. Youth entrepreneurship, ag production, equipping people with the tools so that they will be able to make money for themselves and essentially eliminate poverty. And then our third practice area is strengthening cooperatives and producer groups. And so we work with a lot of co-ops, not only here in the U.S., but also abroad, helping them to, if it's governance, management, establishing bylaws for their board, stuff like that. And some of you may have those skills, and you can certainly volunteer with the Farmer to Farmer program. So our current cycle for Farmer to Farmer with NCBA CLUSA, so we started in October of 2018, and we will go until October of 2023. And our country focuses are Peru, El Salvador, and Honduras. Now, I will tell you, in order to be a volunteer, you do not have to speak Spanish. As a volunteer, we take care of everything for you. And I'll talk about that a little more further in the presentation, but you are definitely provided with a translator. Our area of focus this cycle is going to be focusing on sustainable practices in the coffee and cacao value chain. We want to be able to strengthen co-ops and producer organizations. We also want to promote horticultural enterprises. So some of the possible assignments that we're looking at is going to be working with producers in the coffee region. So like for Honduras, a lot of our producers have mentioned that they would like assistance with the drying process of their coffee cherries. I know many of us drink coffee, but sometimes we don't really think about what is entailed in terms of planting the coffee tree, harvesting that coffee cherry. And oftentimes you'll find that a lot of these producers are being shorted when it comes to their economic growth. So you may have a middleman who is like, oh, well, I'll give you like 15 cents per kilo. And sometimes farmers will accept that. But there are some coffee companies that are paying a premium to their farmers, which I think is great because these companies have realized it's the farmer who is doing the majority of the work. Like they put so much of their heart and soul into growing the coffee and even the cacao, and we should be compensating them a lot better than what we are currently doing. I mean, you think about the bag of coffee that you buy from Starbucks. I am not a coffee drinker, so I cannot attest to the highest price of a bag of coffee. But I would imagine that, you know, it ranges anywhere from like sometimes $9 a bag and maybe even up into the 20s, depending on if it's a specialty coffee or not. But even assignments in working with co-ops. So I currently have a position that I'm recruiting for that requires assisting a co-op to establish their bylaws, governance issues. So if you have experience in that, please do not hesitate to call me. Let's see. So here's the nitty-gritty for how Farmer to Farmer works. And if you all have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask them, and Shannon, feel free to interrupt me, and I'll answer those questions. So going from left to right of the screen, initially it's my responsibility to identify a host organization that's going to benefit from volunteer technical assistance. We want to make sure that the groups that we're assisting are not financially able to provide their constituents with the technical assistance that they need. Because then it's kind of like, okay, so what were we able to do other than provide them with that technical assistance? We want to make sure that the people that we're helping are truly in need and could not afford this technical assistance otherwise. The volunteer assignments are typically 2 to 4 weeks, and you can volunteer for as many volunteer assignments as you would like. It's a 5-year period. We, NCBA CLUSA, will be working in the 3 sectors that I mentioned previously, but there are other organizations that are working in like aquaculture or livestock and poultry management. Even for those of you who may be working with like the farm credit unions or anything like that, we need you all's assistance to help these communities. We identify qualified volunteers, so that's what I'm doing right now for the position that I mentioned in Honduras, for someone to help with the organizational development. And then the volunteer will be put in contact with the field staff to gauge what it is exactly that the organization in country needs. And we do also provide a written scope of work, is what we call it, so that details, it gives you a little background on the organization, and provides details with what the objectives of that particular assignment. And then you, as a volunteer, will go in country, provide that assistance. We do require that the volunteers write a report at the end of providing that technical assistance, including recommendations for that host organization. Because moving forward, we want to make sure that we're not sending volunteers to the same groups, providing them with the same information. We want to essentially be able to build upon experiences, build upon the technical experience that these organizations, that these co-ops, producer groups are receiving, so that they can grow and they'll be self-sustaining after the 5-year period or however long. And then that field staff will follow up with the host organization, so there is accountability. We want to make sure that the recommendations that are being provided to the host organizations are feasible, so that they'll actually be able to do the recommendations. Some of you may be trying to figure out, well, am I actually qualified? And I guarantee you that the majority of you all are. We do ask that the volunteer have an open heart and open mind, be a U.S. citizen, have the technical skills, and be willing to share your expertise with these people who are in need. I am a former volunteer with this program. I volunteered with NCBA CLUSA in 2016, and one of the things that I can honestly say is that being able to work with women's enterprises and hearing them tell their stories about how previously they relied solely on their husband's income to support the household, and the large majority of those men were working in the millet fields, and so that's an annual harvest. So once a year, these men are out here making all the money that is supposed to support their family. But then I was working with these women who were able to establish their vegetable gardens, grow, plant and harvest their fruits and vegetables, and then sell them at market. And it was like there was so much pride that these women had, knowing that they are now able to contribute to the household, pay their children's school fees, keep food, available for their families so that, they can survive. And that's my testimony. But I would argue that a lot of volunteers have that similar sentiment. Let's see, what else? Oh, and there is the cultural exchange, recognizing like you're in another country, you're going to learn about other people's culture, they're going to learn about yours, and just be open. Yeah. So as I mentioned, we have our 2018 to 2023 volunteer cycle. And so these are some of the volunteer assignments that you could expect to see coming from NCBA CLUSA. So in terms of agricultural production and processing techniques, so whether that is in the coffee or cacao, or we do have some availability for what we call our flex assignments, that's listed down at the bottom. And that could actually place you in any country outside of the three that I've already mentioned in a totally different sector. So let's say you have experience in soap making. That could be considered a flex assignment that maybe we do in the Dominican Republic or in Benin or any country. Organizational development, I mentioned that before. Business skills. I think sometimes the name farmer to farmer can be quite misleading because it's not just us placing U.S. farmers in contact with farmers that are in other countries, but it's also being able to get people who have that marketing expertise that can help these farmers better market their product, or maybe providing them with the advertisement tools that they need so that they can become more financially stable. Even engineering. So we are working with Engineers Without Borders as well as the National Peace Corps Association, which is actually different from Peace Corps, in order to fulfill some of these volunteer assignments. So if you have engineering expertise, please do not hesitate to contact me, and I can place you in contact with the correct person. So here's just a little bit of experience, or just a little bit of info about my farmer-to-farmer experience. So in 2016, I went to Senegal, and this is me in the middle right here with this hat on, kneeling down. So this particular village, this is their nursery. So this is what they use as their nursery in preparation for planting their crops that they have. Oh, and I'm sorry, the name of the organization was Aprofes, which is essentially I don't know if anyone speaks French. I do not. See, this is why I said you don't have to speak the language. But it was the Association for the Promotion of the Senegalese Women. And so I conducted my trainings in the 4 villages in the Kaolack region. So this red dot right here, that's the Kaolack region of Senegal. And I was in Chimen, Kokochi, Gapa, and Gindor. And I provided trainings on composting, which is something that is very near and dear to my heart, soil fertility, crop rotation, and essentially, this is why I say that you have to be able to, essentially you have to be flexible, kind of going with the flow, because my initial understanding of my assignment was that I was going to help these women prepare for their first organic inspection. And as it turns out, you know, they needed other things as well. So the record keeping, water management, all the mulching, the composting, like that was stuff that they needed assistance with. And so I was able to help them with that information. Now, the picture on the top left, you have to understand that where we're working, the villages or communities where you're working, they're not always going to have a standing classroom for you to provide this training. So this top left picture was a training that I conducted under a tree in Senegal. And then this middle picture, this was in a different village, but they had more of a standing schoolhouse. And so what wound up happening was they didn't hold classes that day, but they had the trainings in their schoolroom. And then this is me down here, that bottom left picture. This is me, I think those are chili plants. They grew, well, the different villages were growing different things, and you'll see that later. So I talked to them about like companion planting, pest control, one thing that I had never seen before going to Senegal was this animal. It resembles a squirrel, but they call it the jar, and it is apparently wreaking havoc on people's gardens. So we talked about measures that they could take to prevent the jar from taking over their fields. And I highly recommend, like, if you're going to do a training, take things that are going to take visuals that the people can use, or tag objects so that they can feel, because sometimes you're working in communities where there's a very low literacy rate, and visuals are great, objects are great, just, the same things that we would take into account if we're teaching here with regards to the different learning styles that people have. You want to have that as one of your focuses when you're training in these communities. Oh. So this was the Gapa village, and so the gentleman here and the picture on the left is actually the cassava root. I eat cassava, yucca, and I had never actually seen the plant or the tree rather. And the interesting thing to me was that it resembles very much the papaya tree. And so I found myself trying to see, like, could I tell the difference between the papaya tree or the cassava tree? But this gentleman, he dug up the tree and he showed me the cassava root, and I was like, this is what I eat. And then this is the women that received the training those 2 days that I was in the Gapa village. And then I went over to Chimen. Now, the men are more involved in this particular village. They're more involved in the vegetable garden. They actually very much support the women in their endeavors. All of the women did not have that story. Some of them talked about how their husbands were initially like, you need to stay home and take care of the kids. But then once they saw the value that the women provided in getting involved in the vegetable production and even the social aspect of it, the men were warming up to the idea of the women working outside of the home. And so this is me with different members of this village. This fruit that this woman is eating is actually called dimbu. I tasted it. I can't recommend that everyone try the fruit when they're traveling to various countries. We all have our own limitations when it comes to our stomachs. But it was like a sweet tart flavor, and if I could find it here, I'd definitely get some more. But a lot of these villages, a lot of these communities, they serve as great hosts. Let's see, Nicole Cook said, oh, I wasn't able to see that. It went away so quickly. But Nicole, I'll come back to your comment or question. But I think you said that you had participated in the program, so that's great. And hopefully we can get you to be a volunteer with NCBA CLUSA. But going back to talking about this particular village, or all of them, they're great hosts. And I find that these people are very welcoming. This particular village, they did this whole skit for me on the last day of training. They did this whole skit, and just the storytelling aspect, not only of the actual skit, but even they do raps. Apparently, like, Akon is like they say Akon is the greatest rapper that, in Senegal, and so a lot of people are rapping. I was just like, okay, well, as long as y'all don't ask me to rap, because that's not my talent. But they're awesome people, amazing people to work with. And then this is me in the Kakochi village. One of the things that I did find here is that the solar pump, which a previous volunteer had helped them to establish and they were using, it had actually broken. So this particular village had, they weren't watering their plants as much. They did have the children helping them to water, and sometimes, we've all been a kid. Some of us have kids. We know that, kids don't always do things the way that they're supposed to. So just emphasizing with them, the importance of watering, and making sure that a volunteer was sent to help them get that solar pump for the well repaired. That's another thing. Or making sure that someone within the village was capable of repairing the well, or the pump, excuse me. So that was one of the recommendations. And then the last village, Gindor, this was the only village that had the standing school. So that's where we conducted the trainings. And they actually, I want to say, like, this was one of the better vegetable gardens that I saw in terms of maintenance. And so here on the top left, we have the photo. This is the entrance to their garden. And I mean, they're very friendly people. You can see that in the bottom photo. But then the top right photo is actually a cola nut. Now, I don't know the history of Coca-Cola so much. I'm not an expert in Coca-Cola, but I was told that at one point Coca-Cola was using the cola nut for production. But I did try it. Clearly, you may have recognized the pattern in me now. I will try almost anything. But I did try the cola nut. It was very bitter, very bitter. I am so glad I did not take a larger bite out of it. But they rant and rave about this because it's like their coffee. And the amount of caffeine that is in this nut is apparently very high. So I might have been a little bit more alert after that. I can't remember exactly. With regards to accommodations, so this is me at the Hotel Relais in Cadillac. We provide coverage for essentially everything. As a volunteer, we only ask that you have the availability to, for the time commitment, which you will know in advance. So when I post the assignments that we have coming up and you apply, you'll know how long the assignment will take. We pay for your flights, accommodations, you receive per diem, any physicals that you get in preparation for the trip, or any health-related expenses associated with preparation for the trip, we do cover that. We reimburse you all for that. You are provided with in-country transportation, a translator, and you do get some time for kind of like some R&R or tourists, visiting tourist attractions while you're there. But one of the things that, or a couple of the things rather, that I learned, the village women, they're always trying to marry you off. Before I left, they told me, oh, if you're not married by the next time you come here, we're going to find you a Senegalese husband. But they're such good people. Also, there's no shortage of men trying to be your husband, so, you may find a gentleman suitor while you're there, who knows. But storytelling is key, especially in these particular communities. If you're able to provide the similes, the metaphors to getting whatever you're training these people on, if you're able to provide them with those metaphors, it's almost like they understand it so much more. Like I gave them the example of, when you pick your vegetables, you don't necessarily want to pick them by the tips, or maybe you want to get them by the roots instead. So I said, when you pick up your children, you don't pick up your child by their hair. You pick them up by their body or at their base. And it made sense to them. They're just able to better, some people are able to better relate once you factor in that storytelling instead of the direct deliverance of the information. And then this is, like I said, there's some opportunity for the tourist attractions. So the photo on the left is the Renaissance movement sculpture that's in Dakar, and then the picture on the right is of me at Gorée Island. That's right off the coast of Senegal, right off the coast of Dakar, which was they also refer to it as the door of no return. This is the actual door. So this was the last place on the continent of Africa where slaves were as they boarded the ships for the slave journey. And thank you all so much. If you all have any questions or you're interested in volunteering, please do not hesitate to call me or email me. Probably email is best, though. Does anyone have any questions?
Sequoia, that was excellent. I appreciate you sharing, the details of the program and then also your personal experiences.
Absolutely.
That was really
Absolutely.
great. Please
Okay.
use the chat pod or the question pod if you have any questions for Sequoia, and you can select who you want to send your question to, so you can share to all participants or myself or Sequoia. That would be great. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. We will be emailing you soon.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Perfect.
I'm trying to go back, Shannon. I apologize. I apologize, everyone. I'm trying to figure out how do I go back to the big screen so I can see.
You can start your slideshow, maybe.
Let's see. Start the slideshow.
Is that how it was, or
for the chat? Because someone had sent me a message.
Oh, okay. You can stop sharing your screen.
Okay. All right. Let's see.
You can go up to share and hit stop sharing.
Okay. And then.
See the chat over there.
Yes. Okay. So I see. Is there a list of projects we can access? So yes. Wait. Was there more to that question? Let's see. How can I get this to go bigger? Nope. Okay. Is there a list of projects we can access? So each implementer, so there are 8 implementers of the Farmer to Farmer program, or 8 organizations that are implementing these programs. And so each implementer, each organization has their specialty. So like Partners of the Americas is one, Catholic Relief Services, NCBA CLUSA, and we essentially have the coffee horticulture sector. I know Partners of the Americas, they're dealing in aquaculture, livestock in like the Caribbean, so they're actually a little spread out. They're Colombia, Guyana, Dominican Republic, I'm trying to think, and I think they have a couple countries in sub-Saharan Africa. There's Land O'Lakes. I don't know if you all knew this, but Land O'Lakes does have their international development sector as well. So they are involved in this farmer to farmer program for the exchange. On our website for NCBA CLUSA, we list the positions that we are recruiting for. I like to give volunteers, or I like to post the assignments anywhere from 3 to 4 months in advance, but it doesn't always work out that way. So I would just recommend checking with the different implementers, and yeah, check up on their website for their volunteer assignments that they'll have. Let's see. Lori said, what is NCBA CLUSA? Oh, Lori, I'm glad you asked. I'm sorry, I didn't explain. So it's the National Cooperative Business Association, the Cooperative League of the United States of America. So essentially, we are the co-op association that co-ops here in the U.S. can obtain membership with, and we support co-ops. Let's see. Tarikan. Okay. Is there an opportunity for us to learn from the communities we assist, and then to have them visit our communities in the U.S. for cultural or agricultural exchange? So, Tariqan, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Yes, so I just found out about within farmer to farmer, there isn't the opportunity for exchange, like U.S. citizens going to these other countries and then someone or a few of those representatives coming here. But I did just learn this past week, because we had our implementers conference this past week. There is a program, and I'm trying to go through my notes to see if I can get you the name of that, that does allow for that exchange, where it's not only our farmers from the U.S. going to these countries, but also farmers from other countries coming here. And when I see it in my notes, I will definitely, oh, here it is, the Cochrane Fellowship Program. It's a USDA project. Cochrane Fellowship Program, COCHRAN. Yep. All right. I thought I saw another one.
Yeah, it looks like they're coming through to you privately, so I can't.
Yes. No worries, no worries. Let me see. Okay. Okay, Nicole, do you mind if I read your comment, or feel free to respond. One thing that I will note, okay, thanks, Nicole. When you go to these countries, keep in mind that sometimes the technologies that we are afforded here in the U.S., they're not guaranteed to be present in the countries where you'll be volunteering. So I know one recommendation is kind of to have like this old school method, or old school thinking when you go to these countries. But you know what? I also would argue that I think that farmers would just creative people. Like, we will figure out a way to overcome any obstacle, right? Like, think about all the things that you may have encountered, whether on your family farm or at work, and we always figure out a way to overcome that. So just remain creative. Okay, I'm going to read Nicole's comment. She says, thank you so much for the program. I was in Bhutan this summer and got connected with a farmer exchange program that focuses on women farmers in Bhutan. To date, they've only exchanged with European countries, but there is a lot of interest in exchanging with U.S. farmers and agricultural organizations. I've kept in touch with the program, and I would like to develop a way for our extension programs to get involved. And I think that's great, Nicole. There are different avenues that you could possibly take, and I'd be happy to discuss those with you all, or with you, Nicole, or if anyone else has that same similar question or a similar comment. But yeah, I mean, I just think about sometimes like the technology or the inventions, the creative ways that people have come up with managing certain situations in other countries, and I'm like, I could totally use that at home. So it's a great knowledge exchange. Uh-oh. Can everyone hear me? I just got a message saying something about we're having issues with the network.
I can hear you good.
Okay, great.
I can hear you good.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's a great opportunity for that knowledge exchange, and there are a number of programs out here that are available to people. Now, one thing that I will note, and I can't remember if I said this earlier, but you know, in the last cycle for Farmer to Farmer, they run the statistics, and they found that 33% of the volunteers were women, and 41% of the beneficiaries were women. And so I would absolutely love to see that 33% and that 41% increase. And I think that we collectively, we can do this. I really do. It's going to take time and commitment, but I would love to see those numbers increase, especially from the volunteer perspective. Um, I've been working, like, I majored in animal science, and I know what it's like to be in a room with a bunch of men from various countries, and, I'm trying to weigh in on a topic about like, beef cattle or broiler birds, and it's kind of like, in some instances, I was ignored, like, my input was ignored, and I'm just like, this is ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. I possess the wealth of information, if not more, than any man in this room. But simply because I was a woman, my comments were sometimes overlooked, and that's not the case in all. That's not the case always, but sometimes. And I just feel like we as women have this obligation to support one another. And this is one of the ways in which we can do that. Absolutely. Let's see.
So there's a question about the official website for NCBA CLUSA.
Yes.
There was a mention that they've seen a lot of different sites, so perhaps putting that in the chat pod would be great.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Let me send this to you all now. So we are ncba.coop. And we actually, hold on, let me just make sure because we're switching over. Okay, here we go. I'll give you, we just got a new website, so I'm going to send you all the updated version. There you go. That is us. That is NCBA CLUSA. Yep.
Perfect.
And so one thing that I'm looking to start for this current cycle is a volunteer photo contest. So feel free to bring your photography skills with you when you come on assignment. And I think it's just, I really want to spread the word about the program, and not just for NCBA CLUSA, but just for the farmer-to-farmer program in general, because prior to 2016, I had no knowledge of farmer-to-farmer. And I'm willing to bet that a lot of us here now were not aware of farmer-to-farmer before this discussion. And so that's been one of my main focuses, is to bring attention to this amazing program that's been in existence for almost 40 years. And if anyone has any concerns about safety issues when they're traveling, just know that all of the implementers, we go through a security debriefing. So you are like different routes and hotels, and everything has been vetted by a security team who's come in country and checked everything out. I kind of like to think of them as like our James Bond in the office that goes down there and checks everything out before we actually leave to go to these various countries. And, if anyone ever had any doubt about their ability to be able to participate in some of these programs, I just say, remove the doubt, like, believe in yourself and your capabilities, and you'll succeed. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. I can put my I don't mind sharing my screen again, just in case anyone didn't get it. Or here, I'll just put it in the chat, and then everyone will have it. Yep, that's me.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. Anything else for Sequoia? I'm going to go ahead and stop recording at this point.
Okay.